Excellent.
All
We're
right, here we
recording.
go. We're recording.
We're recording. Okay, guys,
Woo!
here we are, leading by example, getting out of our comfort zones. So, what I wanted to do with the Wingmam Inner Circle is give you guys something that could be actionable. There's an awful lot of information out there on the internet, and some of it's just crap, even though many of the advice givers are well-intentioned and trying to look out for your best interest. But it's not actually really effective because a lot of it is really based on performance, like what to text, what to wear, how to start a conversation, openers, one lines and things like that, which I've put in some of my videos, but the reality is that's just the surface stuff and that isn't really what is attractive to women. So it's like, how do you get there? And the key is that you have to get to a place of gaining or garnering respect from not just women, but from others, and not just others, but most importantly, from yourself. And there's a few ways to do that, and that's what we're going to focus on here. So in this first podcast, what I really wanted to do is introduce you to Cris, because he's going to be your main guide. There's Cris. Say hi.
Hello, guys.
Awesome. He's going to tell you more about himself in a minute. And just to let you know, I've known Cris for over 15 years. He started his own fitness studio, and that was really successful. He won tons of awards for fitness and entrepreneurship. And then he sold that and built an event venue or retreat center, which have you, in the tropics. And that is successful as well. And the reason Cris is a perfect guy for you guys is because he's actually walked some of your paths. Like, even though he's been successful on the surface, he's also had some struggles in relationships that we've talked about over the years. And he's definitely learned from those relationships. We've had many conversations, and now he's in a really good place. He's in a relationship with an amazing lady who is kind and beautiful inside and out. And I think he's in a really good spot to be able to give you the guidance that you need, which means taking actionable steps in the real world. And that's stuff that has to come from a man because I'm not a man. But I think with that said, I will pass it on to Cris. What should I ask you now?
Well, you can ask me why I decided to join this with you,
Yeah,
as we had
okay.
scripted.
I know we're totally off
Although
script
we're
because
going uncut and unedited.
yeah, we're doing the uncut version. So yeah, what made you decide to join the inner circle?
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so originally when you asked me, I was a quick yes because I respect you and the work that you do, and I've always had a great relationship with you. So it was an easy yes, but the journey to get to this point has been the challenging part, you know. I'm not a tech guy, setting up all of this technology, connecting servers to emails and verification codes, passcodes, all of that stuff was hard for me. But the biggest challenge for me, I guess, was kind of facing a little bit of imposter syndrome, you know. I've known you for 15 years and you've provided a lot of great advice for me as far as dating is concerned. But aside from that, I didn't spend a lot of time watching your channel. I'd watch your videos when they came on Facebook and whatnot. But when I went to your channel after you gave me the assignment of studying some videos, I realized you had this huge following. And as soon as I saw that, fear entered into me and I started worrying about like, I've got my own challenges still, I'm still working on my personal journey. Am I a good role model in this? And I went to my girlfriend and we chatted about it and I shared with her my insecurities and some of the challenges I was going through mentally to prepare myself for this. And she took a moment to just remind me that, you've done a great job in who you've become from the person that you were. And as in a relationship with you, I've really appreciated your communication and your self-awareness and your openness. And one thing that she said that really resonated with me was she's currently taking a course called Bio Neuro Emotion. And what she said she really enjoyed about her mentors is that they're all very humble. They all have skin in the game. They're all still working on themselves. They're on their own personal journey. They have their ups and downs. And no one's perfect, and they don't want to see, guests, people following, they don't want to see somebody who pretends to be perfect. So I'm here and all my positives and all my flaws, and I'm a guy that just, wants to help out. I want to be of service. I want to give back in any way that I can. And the idea of working with these men and helping them find their way on their own personal journey was really exciting to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've said in a lot of videos that it's about progress, not perfection. Like it's always going to be a journey. There's always going to be another level of self-development. And it's not because we don't deserve it, but because we do deserve it. So it's not like you have to push yourself to be better because you're not good enough, but because you are good enough. And then there's another level to explore, just because there's always going to be stuff that comes up in life and all of our relationships, like whether they're romantic or not, where we might get triggered, or we're offered an opportunity to reflect and sort of look at things that need to be addressed that we didn't know were there before. I mean, it still comes up for me, mostly in my friendships, because I'm friends with women, and it's like it's challenging for me, especially having dealt with and worked with and answered so many comments. Like I've read probably over 50,000 comments over the years, and of course, mostly from men, right? Um, I'm far more logical and pragmatic than I used to be. And so now dealing with women, even though I know logically why some of these things come up with them, it's still sometimes a challenge to deal with it, even in a personal friendship. So, it's just a huge, um, I think it's a big struggle for men, because men and women typically are wired differently. And it's just something that is not taught in schools. If anything, there's a lot of information in the media and social media that is inaccurate and maybe well-intentioned, but not helpful.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I think social media really does drive a divide between men and women in lots of ways, pointing out the flaws of women and memes for men, pointing out the flaws of men and memes for women, and kind of yeah, following that desire to separate the two. And I think that, in our personal journey, it's important to look at the inner onion metaphor, and how every layer that we peel back is going to it's going to it's going to show us the second layer that we need to work on, right? And like you said about
yeah.
the triggers, there's always going to be things that are triggering us, and as long as we can be conscious about those triggers and see that, these are things that come from conditioning and that they're not something necessarily related to our partner, then we can act in a way that's appropriate rather than taking those triggers and putting them back on our partners. And for me, that's been a big step in my personal growth is reaching a higher level of self-awareness and understanding that, there's more to these situations than the surface tells us, and understanding, my past traumas and my past conditioning and how those relate to the triggers that I have has really been able to give me like a bit of a buffer between the actions that I take and the thoughts that I have. And it's paid dividends a lot in my current relationship for sure.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that, like between what kind of triggers, or we had talked about attachment style quite a bit in some of your previous relationships, and probably in your current relationship. We haven't really talked about that because it's been going so well. But how has learning more about yourself and being more self-reflective and self-responsible uh, changed your relationships from the past to your current relationship?
Yeah, I think self-responsible is the key word there, right? Understanding that my shit, if you will, belongs to me, and if a person is triggering me and there's something within that person that maybe annoys me or frustrates me, I need to look at myself and see, is this is this feeling justified based on the actions of the person, or am I just reacting based on my internal conditioning, right? And um, in my previous relationship, which was quite challenging, I think because we were different attachment styles and we also had different values, it was difficult for me to discern whether some of the triggers were because of the actions of the other person or because of the way that I was viewing it, right? So,
Mhm.
and it wasn't it wasn't a very conscious relationship. A lot of the time I'd find myself get triggered and then I'd act on those triggers and it would trigger her, of course, and she would act on them. And it would, we would go into this unconscious argument or debate that, essentially didn't get us anywhere.
Mhm.
After that, I took some time and really reflected on myself, and I found more like inner peace within myself. I established myself more within the life that I'm building. I started developing more like inner confidence and a higher level of self-awareness. And in my current relationship, I'm with someone who's very conscious. She's, studying this stuff right now. It's what she's passionate about. So we're able to like look at anything that comes up as something that we're going to solve together. She's got her own stuff that comes up. I have mine that come up. We share it freely and safely with each other in a way that doesn't point the finger at anyone. And it's never about, who's right. It's about how do we solve this, how do we clean up the situation so that you can feel better and that I can feel better. And something that really helps. You mentioned attachment style. In my previous relationship, she was a avoidant attachment,
Mm.
whereas I have tendencies towards the anxious attachment. So we had different needs when it came to conflict and when it came to situations, right? I wanted to deal with it and talk about it and look at it objectively together, whereas she wanted to avoid it and kind of leave it alone, right? So for me, it was hard because I always felt like I was doing the chasing. And in this relationship, we both share similar levels of anxious anxiety, but getting closer to a secure attachment, right? So we have the same needs. When something comes up, we both have that desire to want to resolve it then. We want to do it in a way that is productive and safe and avoids any harm to the other person. So it's been an incredible process, and it has really shown me that there is an important key factor in selecting a partner who has at least a similar attachment style to you, not too far on either end of the spectrum.
Yeah, and actually another note on that, because some of the viewers might not be completely familiar with attachment. I'm looking at both of you. So attachment styles are generally developed during childhood in relationship to our primary caregivers. And they can be either secure, which means you're pretty open and uh, healthy in your interactions with people and your relationships. And then there's insecure, and the insecure attachments are either anxious, which tends to be, well, this is a very simplified version, but you tend to want to um, need need resolution immediately, and sometimes it's associated with clingy or people pleasy. And the avoidant are the people who I call the runners. I have both in types in my friendships, actually. And they tend to want to just run away and process before they're able to deal with something. If they're highly avoidant, then they often don't come back and don't deal with it. But ideally, they will. And then there's I think, what's the other one? Disorganized. So that might be someone they vacillate. Sorry about background noise. I'm in the city. They vacillate between anxious and avoidance. So some situations may trigger them to, become very clingy and needy. Other situations cause them to run away. And there are not very many of them in the population, and they tend to have like high trauma in their childhood. But something to note about attachment styles is that people who have secure attachment, if they end up with someone with a severe insecure attachment, that person who's secure can become more insecure in their attachment, and also vice versa. So if someone has an insecure attachment, but they end up with someone who's securely attached or in a relatable attachment, kind of like you, then it's easier to relate to what the other person needs. And one of the key things that Cris mentioned in telling his story about his past relationship and his current relationship is that in his current relationship, they're really working as a team. So a lot of times in relationships, it's like people, when there's a trigger, they become on opposite ends, and it's like somebody's going to win, and it's going to be one person or the other. Whereas in his current relationship, it sounds like they both want to win. It's them against the problem, not them against each other, which is really key to having healthy relationship.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And For
So
me, the contrast between the two relationships has really like brought a lot of perspective to the situation, and looking back and reflecting on the previous relationship, there are things I could have done better, but at the same time, the difference on the spectrum was so far that it was, something that was probably an impossible task to try to bring those two kinds of people together. And
yeah, exactly.
whereas the current relationship that I'm in now, because we are on a similar level of the spectrum, the needs that we have are similar, so that when we enter into any kind of conflict, we both have the same desire to have a quick resolution to it, to have a same safe space to share our feelings about it, and to want to support each other in our journey to overcome these triggers and these past conditionings.
That's awesome. Yay. We
Hey.
totally veered off track. Also, I just wanted to like touch base on the imposter syndrome because I didn't note anything about that earlier on. So we're going back to that for a second. I think a lot of people do have imposter syndrome. I definitely had it myself, and still do to some degree, because there's always more to know. Like there's always going to be somebody out there who has more knowledge or more experience, or more accolades or external validation that's visible to others. And I think that's just normal. So the reason I wanted to just touch on that is because even in like the dating world out there, when a guy is trying to develop a new skill and he's just not that at that expert level yet or hasn't mastered it, he's going to feel like an imposter. It's going to feel fake to him. And I think like a lot of the things that hopefully, well, not hopefully, that you're going to be guiding them to do, if they do the work, they're going to find that inner confidence uh, within themselves, regardless of external factors or outcome or other kinds of outside validation. So I just wanted to make a note on that. And one of the things you had also talked about is like how showing up for yourself, how that can impact your 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 life in terms of non-relationship parts of it, and then also the relationship parts of that. So can you describe a little bit about how showing up for yourself does impact dating and relationships?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I guess we can look at it at two levels, right? If you're in a relationship, it's gonna be a benefit to you in one way, and if you're dating, it's a benefit to you in the other way. If you're in the dating field, in the dating market, a guy who has a high level of self-discipline has a higher level of confidence. And, in the dating world, confidence is king, of course, right? So when you show up for yourself daily, when you prove to yourself that you can do the difficult things, when you can grind it out and you have a high level of resilience, that comes through in the man that you are, and women are attracted to that. As far as a relationship is concerned, most women primarily just want to feel safe in a relationship. And a man who shows up for himself each day, who puts in the work, who doesn't make excuses, who does what he says he's going to do, gives a woman confidence, and it makes her feel safe. She knows that she can count on her man, that she can rely on him, and that he's a safe space for her. So, the guy that shows up, whether he's single or in a relationship, is going to see benefits on both ends of the spectrum, and is going to drastically improve the way that he lives his life.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that translates into a honking outside my apartment.
I didn't hear it.
Um, no, it's our personal life or our relationship life is affected by our general life and vice versa. So the more confident you are in other areas of your life, whether it's business, career, finances, health, um, mental health, emotions, then those also reflect into your romantic relationships.
Yeah,
Um,
and
go ahead.
go ahead. No, you finish.
Nope, that was it for that one. You
Okay.
go ahead.
I forget what I was going to say now.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then let's see here. Uh you've already because we made notes, but we didn't follow them. Okay, so let's talk about what gets you the most excited about being part of this inner circle. And
Yeah, that's a good question. Huh?
I was gonna say, and like how what you're gonna do is gonna help these guys level up in their real lives.
Okay, yeah, no. As you mentioned before, I operate a retreat venue here in the tropics, and as enjoyable and as a lifestyle, a chill lifestyle that is, I really do miss the coaching that I had within my fitness studio. The opportunity to really help people become better versions of them. It was almost a weekly thing for me to have someone come up to me and be like, you know what, thank you so much. In the last 3 months, I've lost 15 pounds. I have more confidence. I have more energy. I just feel better about life in general. And, that feeling to me brought a lot of joy in my life. And, I have joy. I have a daughter, a wonderful girlfriend, and, things that I enjoy doing, but I really miss being of service. And when you presented this opportunity to me, it resonated, because I know that there's a side of me that feels most valuable when I'm contributing to the embetterment of humanity in my own little way. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that are struggling in the dating world. Dating is hard now. Life is harder. It's easy to be apathetic about life. It's easy to kind of count yourself out and give up on you. But I believe that everybody, when approached with some accountability, and when working with someone who they know really legitimately cares about them and their progress, is going to be able to dig a little bit deeper within themselves and find that inner will to be able to make those changes in their life, to get in better shape, to have better health, to develop more confidence, and essentially, have a better life because of it.
Hmm. Regardless of women.
Regardless of women. Yeah, I mean, that's the goal first, right? I know that you're a dating coach and dating is what you do, but we've also talked a lot about the importance of building ourselves up as men, right? And of having a high level of self-awareness so that when you do get into a relationship, you can navigate it better, right?
Mhm.
So the goal for us in this program is to help men become better versions of themselves. We're not trying to become anything. We're just trying to become better versions of ourselves. I remember I used to think of myself as a piece of clay, and I was going to mold myself into this man that I wanted to be. And I was going to take clay and add to it. And I was going to become this person. And over time, I did. I became that person. But what I realized was, on the outside, maybe the person had changed, but on the inside, I was still the same person. And now I'm more in the belief that, the person that we are supposed to be is kind of already inside of us, kind of like the statue carved within the stone, and all we got to do is kind of chip away those inner layers to reveal, the true person we are. Get rid of the addictions, get rid of the vices, get rid of the bad thinking, get rid of the laziness and the apathy and the self-doubt and the self-worth issues, and start to reveal the true person that you are on the inside. And that's where my path has taken me of recent, but probably in the last year or so. Instead of trying to create, I've been trying to reveal. And it's been a very awakening process for me, and it's been very gratifying because I don't really know who I'm going to become, but I know that as I strip away those layers, I start feeling more aligned with the person that I am, and it's more aligned with the person that I've always wanted to be.
That's awesome. I don't even know what to add to that. It's so brilliant.
It was complete. You got to say nothing. I nailed it.
You totally nailed it. Yeah, and I think that's also part of why you're just a great person for this, and now is the right time. Like I thought about asking you a couple of years ago, but it wasn't the right time. There wasn't enough
No,
of the
definitely
onion
not.
revealed yet. And now it is the right time. And I think that, you know, e- especially because you have enough humility to show that it's still a work in progress, right? Like, or an art in progress. See what can happen, technical difficulties,
This is why we should have splurged for the paid version of Zoom, not the freebie one.
right? Paid version, guys.
But we're back.
We're back. So, just before we wrap this up, I wanted to always be able to give them something that they can take home as an actionable. So, from my perspective on this one, I'd like them to either do an attachment quiz, like to find out what their attachment style is, and or to watch the triggers video. So we have two videos that we've put somewhere, and one is the one you recommended, which is great, and then another one that I've done, which is a different perspective. So I think those are two things that they can do, which will help them in their future relationships. Do you have anything else that you might suggest for them based on our conversation?
No, I think that's a good start for them. And then I think what they can do is they can come back into the dating conversation side of things with a podcast and share some of their insights into what they've learned from the video. And yeah, I also encourage people to do some of their own research as well, right? So watch those videos, and if you're still not fully absorbing it and it's not resonating with you, go a little bit deeper with it. Find some more videos on the same topic. Maybe find a couple people that you like to listen to and take some time to let it soak in, because all of this stuff is super helpful in relationships. It's super helpful in our personal development, and it's something that's going to have a lasting benefit for anybody who applies themselves to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And one other thing that I just want to mention to everybody, including you and I, or you and me, is that's my gooder English, is, anytime you find out that you've been doing something wrong, it's actually really good because, information is potential power, so if you're not aware, you can't change something. And, so when you do discover that, oh crap, I've been doing this thing wrong all these years, or it's not really wrong. It's just that, we were using whatever information and knowledge we had at the time. And when you know better, you can do better. And it's just an opportunity, not something to, beat yourself up about.
Yeah, no, to touch on that, I actually had a business coach who told me that there's no such thing as losses, right? We're not doing anything wrong. If you take the time to reflect back on it, you look at what you could have done better and you find a way to change it in the future, then you've now given yourself a lesson. So we need to look at things as wins when we do well and lessons when we don't. And if we take the time to self-reflect and, like I said, look at the situation, you can turn that thing that you thought was wrong into an opportunity to grow. And now it's a lesson and it's something of value to you.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things I have as a standard. We'll talk about that more in another podcast. But one of the standards I have in my personal relationships, whether they're business or friendships or romantic, is this is a toughie, but I don't want to hear any complaining. Like, if it's something to do with the big D's, death, disaster, or disease, okay, yes, there's some grace there. But otherwise, that can become a bad spiral that doesn't serve anyone, let alone yourself. So my standard is that if you have something that you're struggling with or a complaint, it needs to come with one of the three S's, which is self accountability. What could I have done differently, or what could I do differently next time? Solutions. Is there a solution to this issue? There may or may not be, which means you might just have to accept it. And silver linings, like, which is, what's the lesson I learned, or what can I do differently next time that will make my life better? So, yeah, it's a high standard to have, and there's not too many people that live in that space. But unfortunately, I have good friends and other people in my life who are accepting of that, and most of them embrace it. So
Yeah,
that's what I'd
yeah. And
like
it's
to
one
ask.
thing
What's that?
it's one thing to vent about a situation, right? But it's another thing to keep bringing it back up over and over again. That's when it gets exhausting, you know? It's okay to share your feelings about something, but then let's see some progress. Let's see some work in action, you know? If you come back to me, talk to me about it again, I want to hear what you've done to change it, what you've done to make it better, not the same problem over and over again, because that's exhausting for anyone to listen to.
And it's actually not healthy for the person who is complaining because it hits a dopamine drive pattern that is similar to actually taking action. So it's not serving them, but it feels like it's serving them.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But we'll talk about that more in future episodes, I'm
About
sure.
the complainers.
Yeah. Complainers or drainers.
That's a good one.
So okay, so I think they've got their homework for today. And is there anything else?
No, I think that was great for a first one, all things considered. Yeah, I'm happy with it, and I hope that everybody listening has got a chance to know you a little bit better and get to know me a little bit. And I'm really looking forward to getting started, meeting some of these guys in the paid membership forum, and seeing how we can put together a solid team that's going to be accountable to each other and forward progress oriented and action taking.
Absolutely. And supportive of each other in a positive way. Like what I think the one thing that we really want to see from anyone who's in the group is commitment, like no slacking, no half-assing, no excuses, like show up. One other thing, oh, sorry, I keep doing one other thing. So one other thing I'd like to ask people who are making comments, try to think about using the phrase, I'm a man who, because our identity is one of the strongest drivers in who we are and who we become. So if you're a man who takes action, if you're a man who, wants to understand women, if you're a man who, actually likes women despite our quirkiness and flaws or what have you, it's going to make a big difference. So I'm a man who, that's going to be your prompt today. I'm a man who.
Great.
All right.
Good advice. Own it.
Own it. Whatever it is, make it positive. Okay, I think that's it.
That's it.
All right.
Well,
Thanks for
great
showing up.
job. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks everyone for
Yeah,
listening as well. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support.
awesome. Okay, we'll see you next time.
Ciao for
Bye.
now. Bye.
Hey guys, so that was the first Inner Circle podcast, a chance for you to meet Cris and get a feel for our dynamic, as well as how these conversations are going to go. So future episodes will dive deeper into specific topics based on Inner Circle members' questions, the real stuff that men are dealing with in dating and relationships and life. This was just an appetizer to show you the style. Inner Circle members get the full monthly Wingmam Unfiltered podcast series, plus Cris guiding you through a 12-week level up challenge focused on mental, emotional, and physical masculine mastery, as well as a brotherhood of guys who actually get it and have each other's backs. So if you are ready to go deeper with ongoing support, scan the QR code or check the link below. We are limiting the membership, so if this group is full, please get on the wait list for the next opening, which will be in summer. Either way, thank you for being here. Lots of love and big hug.